Hi guys, I'm Gwinnell. Welcome to Homeschooling on Mama's Bed. If you're new here, I'm homeschooling my 7-year-old son second grade and my 4-year-old daughter preschool. And today I'm going to talk about what I do for preschool for my daughter. I've talked a lot about my curriculum for my son, but I haven't done anything for my daughter and her curriculum. So that is what today's going to be about. Preschool. If you watched my homeschool haul video for 2025, you got to see all of the homeschool supplies that we have for this year and also where we house them on our homeschool bookshelf. And I gave a tour of that bookshelf. Something I did not quite have yet was my daughter's own school book holder. And the reason is because I hadn't decided what curriculum I was going to use for her. I hadn't even at the time decided to do an official preschool curriculum for her. But she has shown me that she is ready. She's 4, but she knows all of her uppercase letters, all her lowercase letters, the names of them. She knows the sounds of all the letters of the alphabet, and she's even starting to do some blending. So she is very much ready. She understands rhyming as well, so she is ready to learn how to read. We're still in the very beginning phases. I did a lot of this with my son when he was in kindergarten. In my son's kindergarten program, there was a lot of parent support, and so I did a lot of reading with my son, a lot of read aloud. I did a lot of things to help him learn how to read, and I'm still doing that. He's in second grade, so he's still learning how to read. So I've got a lot of knowledge just in helping my son how to read. Now I'm able to do things a little bit better with my daughter, all from the start, because I am homeschooling her from start to finish. So that being said, I have a lot more under my belt now than I did my son. And so I'm able to recognize where she is and the clues that she gives to tell me, okay, is she ready? Is she not? So your 4-year-old might not be here, and that is totally fine. I think something that's very important to recognize is every child is different. And just because my second child does, if we have a third kiddo, who's to say they'll be ready at that point? Every kid is just so different and unique, and no one should be compared to another, not even kids in your own family. Every child is just too different and their needs are too unique to put a label on. So my daughter's 4, but that does not mean that every child is going to be ready. But I also, at the same time, I want to share with you some of the things that I did early on to help her get to this point. You don't have to do this as early as I do it. They're just organic things that are non-pressure that help your child prepare to eventually read. And you would be surprised at some of these things, because some of these things are not things you would think to even do or associate with learning how to read. So before I get into what we do, I'm going to talk about what I did to get to this point. Okay, so this is part B. Part A is, what did I do to get her ready for reading? Number 1, I had her listen to Super Simple Songs. It's a YouTube channel, and they are beautiful songs with beautiful cartoons. Why does music matter? Because music teaches rhythm. There's no learning how to read in Super Simple Songs. They do have some alphabet videos, which were fantastic. When she was ready for that point, we did go there. But these are nursery rhymes. These are fun songs. These are seasonal songs. So I highly recommend it anyways. They're really fun and really helpful for kids, but they teach rhythm. And the reason rhythm matters is because rhythm is linked to learning how to read. If you can develop better rhythm, a language does follow a rhythm as well. So more linguistics than phonetical kind of stuff. The second thing that I did was, when she was about 3 years old, I then had her start doing Miss Rachel. Now, I did Miss Rachel Preschool, which that's also a YouTube channel that I follow. The reason I went that route is because her birthday is after our school's deadline. She missed preschool, but I was like, okay, but she's about to be 3 and she's ready for preschool. So I'm just going to do preschool at home. This was before I was even homeschooling. So the homeschooling was like in the works well before I ever started homeschooling. So I started doing that. I did Miss Rachel's preschool with her, and that was really effective. She does a really, really good job, and she has a lot of training. So I trust her. I put a lot of confidence in her. And so we did a lot there. And that was fantastic. In Miss Rachel's channel, she is going to go over phonics. She is going to go over letters, and she's going to go over their phonic sound. And she's going to talk about words that pair with that letter. So it is a fantastic bridge to actually preparing you for maybe a more formal preschool. After that, once my daughter had outgrown Super Simple Songs, every kiddo does at some point, and I will reintroduce it to her. They go through ebbs and flows and stages of what they want to watch, right? And I'm not too much into TV with her, but these are really helpful things that made a big difference for her. She kind of outgrew Super Simple Songs. She kind of outgrew Miss Rachel. So then my next step was Alpha Blocks. This is something that my son's kindergarten teacher had the kiddos watch, and it is amazing. I do not blame her for that, because it is an incredible program that very naturally, organically teaches a child about phonic sounds, and through gradual but constant repetition of these letter sounds, my daughter was able to learn her lowercase letters because they primarily use lowercase letters. That's where she learned them. I didn't teach her any of it. I wanted her to organically learn things at her own pace instead of forcing a bunch down her throat, right? But really quickly, she had learned uppercase through Miss Rachel. She learned lowercase through alpha blocks. And then she learned their phonic sound through alpha blocks because they will say like T, 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 and then they'll use T in word form. So tick, tock, like they'll say things like that. So she was about a little bit after 3.5 when we started alpha blocks. And very naturally, for about half a year, she just absorbed it and she would watch it. And we would watch a little bit every single day. And that's it. An important toy that I used all throughout this time are these ice cream blocks. And the cones are an uppercase letter and the scoop is a lowercase letter. So she was very just gradually learning that, like, for example, this is an uppercase N and then you want to match it with the lowercase n. And for the most part, she was just playing with them and I was not pressuring, no, that letter goes with this letter. But she would, my daughter likes to line up her toys. So she would be able to identify all of the uppercase. This really solidified what she was learning with Miss Rachel. I really recommend these ice cream toys. You can just get them on Amazon. That's where I got them. But the cones were able to teach my daughter and solidify the uppercase letters like she was learning in Miss Rachel. And then as she started watching alpha blocks, she would be able to pair the two together. So there's a lot of fun colors. I got the one that had purple, blue, green, yellow, orange, red, and pink. And I just loved all the colors. She likes all the colors. She really gravitates to colorful things. So I tailored her learning resource to her specific needs. Maybe your kiddo would prefer something different. So there's lots of different options out there. The ice cream blocks just happen to work really well for us. These are simple ways that I approached preschool for my daughter. Now I'm going to go into the actual curriculum that I have right now for pre-reading and preschool. Okay, for our preschool curriculum, I have it divided into two components. One is reading and one is other preschool skills like cutting, writing, colors, numbers, being able to pick apart differences in pictures, saying, okay, which one's different? Which one has a different image or shape? It's going to go into a little bit of shapes and things like that, preschool skills that they're going to pick up. Let's start with the first category, which is learning how to read. And for that, I have picked All About Reading, Pre-Reading. Now, there is a book that I supplement because I don't feel like this is complete and I don't feel like all the components are worth the money. So I'll show you how I put it all together and how I do a whole lesson with the components that I have. So here we have the teacher manual. Additionally, I go for Gawkin workbooks and I do an alphabet version. So this is Play Smart Alphabet. And what I really love about this is it has an activity component to it. So it has a sticker book page, and then this is strictly the alphabet. And so here they have uppercase letters, which is really helpful. And then this is what they would do for learning the letter A. So I've got a few activities. I find that this book is just as effective as the All About Reading pre-reading activity book, but it's so much cheaper. So I highly recommend getting a used version of the All About Reading pre-reading teacher manual and then getting this for the activity book instead. I do still recommend the readers, and I got these used, so I'm not spending a lot of money. I don't feel like the whole program is worth the money. I really do not. I do not feel like these books and the teacher manual are really worth all that money. I also have these cards. These cards are really, really effective. I do recommend getting these if you can. They're very helpful to the lessons. And then lastly is a puppet. Now, I was borrowing my sister's just to try her whole pre-reading unit, just to see how I liked it, if it was worth it. And so this is how I found, oh, I don't think this is worth the money. I think here's a better option instead that's just as effective. You could get Ziggy the puppet, and I did borrow Ziggy the puppet, and my daughter loved Ziggy. It was such a cute puppet, but it's super expensive. And I happen to already have a doggy, so I decided my nephew wanted Ziggy back. So we gave Ziggy back in a very diplomatic way. And we have now been using our dog that teaches French, which is Maurice. So right now he's teaching my daughter English. So I told her that he can have a switch button. He can teach French and he can teach English. He's teaching my son French and he's teaching my daughter English. And she's like, okay, that works. So that's what we do. The puppet unit I feel like is really important because, like I said, what I was doing before was very informal education. Nothing was pushed, nothing was pressured. It was just, we're watching shows, we're playing with toys, right? Very informal, hands-on education that she doesn't understand is school in a sense. Well, now we're doing formal lessons and the puppet has made her excited to start these lessons. And when they're excited to learn, magic happens. So I think this puppet is essential. I know some people have had a hard time pivoting once they've done all of the pre-reading program, then their kid wants to keep using a puppet. I'm not there yet, so I don't have any tips for that. But I do know my daughter loves it, and I do know it makes the lesson so much more fun. So I do recommend it, and I'll let you know what to do once you don't want a puppet anymore in the learning. Or maybe you just use it for a while until they outgrow it. Kids are going to outgrow things. They always do, no matter how much you don't want to. How many toys have you gotten rid of because they just eventually outgrow them? And it was their favorite at one point. So I think eventually, no matter what, they're going to outgrow a puppet, right? Anyways, okay. So how do I use all of these in a lesson? Well, let's pull out this. We'll start with I'll go over lesson 1 and lesson 2 because one uses the puppet more and one uses the cards more. So I think they're both pretty important to show you because they're both a little bit different kinds of lessons. Instead of turning the camera around and doing a flip through that way, because things are interactive, I'm just going to show you here. So lesson number 1 is on capital A. So the first thing that it would normally have you do is pull out your capital letter poster, which if you buy the program, you will get 2 posters, lowercase and uppercase letters of the alphabet. So here's where you would do that. So I'm not going to do that, but it does tell you right before there to sing the alphabet. So here you would sing the ABC song. And then instead of having her talk about the letter A here, I'm going to talk about it right here and reading in zigzag ziggy for the letter A. So here's a zigzag zebra. So here, instead of using the poster, I would just use this front cover of this story and say, okay, sweetie, what letter is this? And she knows them already. So she would say letter A. And then I would read her the story that comes with it. And it's pretty short. Okay, so it's about 3 to 4 pages usually. So really simple. I'll read that really quick little story. The next thing is it's saying for you to do the ABC craft sheet here. And then the next thing after that is choose 1 or more activities from the activity book. So instead of doing a craft for A and an activity book, I'm going to pull open this and do the activities here for letter A. Next, we're going to do a really fun rhyming activity. So here's where we would get out our puppet. You would get out Ziggy, I get out Maurice. And what it has you do, it's going to have you start practicing your rhyming. So it tells you exactly right here the words that you would say. So you would point to their shoulder and you would say, Ziggy would say, this is your holder. And your child would say, oh, no, it's my shoulder. My kiddo never said that. So I just kind of had to prompt her. I'm like, and she would say, no. And I would say, it's your, and then she would say, shoulder. So then you'd have your puppet point to their hand and say, this is your land. And they would say, no. And then I would say, it's your, and she would say, hand. So pointing to different parts of the body and just calling it incorrectly, like calling this your hose instead of your nose and having them recognize, okay, hose, nose, they rhyme. And you do it quite a few times. And okay, this is rhyming. This rhymes with this. And then lastly is 20 minutes of read it aloud time. And I'm actually going to read through this because this is really important. I learned this when my son was in kindergarten and it was really helpful. It says the best thing you can do when it comes to reading aloud is make read aloud time a normal part of your child's daily routine. When you make read aloud a priority, you will log more read aloud hours each week and your child will benefit greatly. 20 minutes a day will amount to 10 hours a month and 120 hours a year. If you start reading books aloud when your child is 1 year old, by the time the child turns 6, he or she has listened to 600 hours of delightful stories, factual accounts, and fantastic storylines. The child's head is filled with the information about people and places near and far, proper grammar, and the rhythm and patterns of language. What a great starting place for learning to read independently. So, and it talks about how one of the best ways to do it is tying it into bedtime, which I also agree that's generally how my family does it. So really, really powerful. So after any lesson, they recommend 20 minutes of read aloud time. And that continues on. They're still doing that with my son's All About Reading in 2nd grade. So, and it's really important. There's so many amazing things. If you're not sure about that, go ahead and research it because you will be blown away by all the amazing things that come from reading aloud for 20 minutes every day to your kiddos. So the lesson ends there, but I don't end it there. I do one more thing. So because we worked on the letter A, I take a simple 3-letter word that starts with the letter A and we practice it. So I write all these letters out and I say, okay, sweetie, what is this letter? And she'll say A. And I say, what sound does A make? And she'll go, ah. And I say, okay, what's this letter? N. What sound does it make? And I say, okay, what is this letter? T. What sound does T make? T. So I say, and so then I have her say it with me, ah, t, ah, t. And then eventually she'll get ant. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what it is. Now she doesn't always get it easily. Sometimes she gets it straight away and sometimes it takes several practices. And that's fine. Everybody's different and every day is different, to be honest. So this is bringing the phonetic awareness, and this is really important before they learn how to read, is learning that each letter has that sound and then those sounds work together to make a word. Lesson 2 is a little bit more book heavy, so I thought I would just flip around the camera to make it easier for you to see. So we have lesson 2, which is capital B. The first thing you're going to do is sing the alphabet song. Then once you do that, you can either pull out your alphabet chart. I just take out my Play Smart alphabet and I say, okay, sweetie, find the letter B. And then she'll find the letter B. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to pull out Zigzag Zebra book, and we're going to read pages 11 through 14. And here I have my daughter say, B, what sound does B make? And she'll say, B, like bear and bee, because they always have really beautiful images that start with that letter B. Then we're going to read the story, and as we're reading the story, you can see there's a lot of bees. And so I say, okay, can you find any of the bees? And she'll point out any of the bees that she sees in the words. And then usually about 3 pages, and so we'll just keep looking for the bees. The next thing it would have you do is an ABC craft and an activity sheet. So again, I pull out my book and I have her work on all the bee things that come with this book. If you wanted to do a craft specifically for the letter B, you could find one. Again, the book isn't bad. The activity book is not necessarily bad. It's just expensive for what you're getting. I just feel like this is more bang for your buck. So I don't think it's worth it. I think this is sufficient. It has tracing, coloring, pasting, and matching games, which I think are just as fun as any other activity book. I'm going to turn the page, and here we are going to play the rhyming cards. So we're going to take these cards. This suggests lining out all of these cards, but I found that was a little bit overwhelming. So what I will actually do is you'll see this is rake and this is cake, and they rhyme. And I take one more and I'll line it right here. Normally I'll do it on a flat surface. And so I'll say, okay, sweetie, find the words that rhyme. And eventually she'll say cake and rake. And then I'll take that away and I'll put some more and say, okay, sweetie, find the ones that rhyme. And eventually she'll say ring and queen. And so then I'll keep that box there, and then I'll put fox and then truck, and I'll say, okay, find the ones that rhyme. And so we just do that until all the cards are gone. I love this little box. It says, if your child needs extra help with this activity, use the following dialogue. Say this word with me. Boat. And then they say boat. Help me find the picture that rhymes with boat. Oat, oat, oat. What sounds like oat at the end? And then child finds the goat. Good. Boat and goat sound the same at the end, so they rhyme. So I love that they give you a tip for how to rhyme if they're having a hard time with that, because that's not always easily picked up by kiddos. The second to last thing that I will do at this point is I will get out my whiteboard and I will write the letters with her. So she is seeing, okay, I'm doing B. Okay, I'm doing O. I'm doing X. And by the time I finish writing, sometimes we're at a point, we're far enough into this that we're at a point where she'll be sounding it out. And sometimes she'll just read the word and tell me what it is. That's not always the case, but sometimes that does happen. If she is just kind of zoning out while I'm writing it, then I will just start as if she didn't know. So I'll say, okay, what is this letter B? What sound does it make? B. What is this letter O? What sound does it make? Ah. And what is this letter X? What sound does it make? X. So then we'll go B, A, X, B, A, X, B, A, X. And then we'll just like speed it up or say it really slow until I can see the wheels are turning in her head and she's starting to see it's box, tying them all together. Sometimes that comes faster, sometimes it comes slower. Now, something I do want to show you next is actually something that I do instead of a craft. I want to show you another way that I do. Okay, a really fun craft that my daughter loves to do with the alphabet to replace one of those craft activity opportunities that I had showed you about is taking a bag of colorful pom-poms and then grabbing a clothespin, taking a few out, and then I just used the book. I was using the actual activity book because it had a really big capital letter, and I will need to go and print some out. Again, that's still so much cheaper than getting a whole activity book that's really expensive when you can get something else that's much cheaper. So I'm going to print out some. Now that I've given my sister back the activity book, I wasn't using it because her son was actually actively using that book. I was just looking through it to see if it was necessary or not. And since I don't think it is, I'm going to print out just capital letters that my daughter can fill out all by herself, but she loves to do this. What I'm about to show you is one of her favorite things. She loves it almost as much as she loves the puppet. And so I have to say, no, we can't play with the pom-poms. We have to save that for school because then she'll like lose the magic. It won't be as exciting. So what we do is to practice her fine motor skills, she's going to pick up one of the balls and she's going to put it down onto the letter and she's going to keep filling it until she gets it. And it won't always drop right, but she's practicing, right? Like she's going to practice filling it all in. And it's another way to practice letter formation without putting pen to paper. So it's really fun. Okay, moving along to our second category, preschool basic skills. So we have scissor skills and I have my preschool basics, and these are each going to cover two very different things. This is going to cover scissors, purely just cutting, and this is going to cover every other skill apart from reading that I want to teach my daughter in preschool. So let's start with scissor skills. We will do this book every other day.
every day we will do the All About Reading, and then every other day we'll rotate between the preschool basics book and this cutting book, just because my daughter doesn't quite have the attention span for more than that. So what I'll do is I will cut out this whole page, and then I'll have my daughter cut along the dotted line, and we will continue maybe doing 1, maybe 2 pages a day, maybe 3. Sometimes she has the capacity for 3, but that's like the max. Usually she's good with 1, maybe 2. Okay, so next we have preschool basics. And so as we start here, we are learning just some random shapes. Let's go back over here, and lines and U's and such. And these are preparing for their shapes. And I just have her trace with her fingers. And these, I initially had her trace with her fingers, and then eventually I had her trace with an actual pencil. And then we're going to go into letters. And for the first bit, that's pretty much what the letters are. We'll do a letter. I don't do too much of this. I'm going to actually pick up this part. I will have her trace actual B or the actual C, but she is not at a point to actually be writing the letters, so I'm not going to force her into that. But I will have her work on the lower part, which is the shapes. And after, we're not really doing too many of the letters here because we have that other book that I showed you for the letters, but these are also really fun activities to go with it. And these are tracing all of the letters, but here now we're getting into skills. So here's a maze. She has to circle the 2 that are the same size. So look at these bunnies, which 2 are the same size. Look at these chickens, which 2 are the same size, and so forth. Finding, okay, which one's the bigger one of all of these? Which one is the smaller one of all of these? Sorry, these are all bigger. There's here, you're going to find ones that are smaller. So this gives you an idea of just different preschool skills that you would want. Which one is different? Which things go together? So this is more critical thinking. And then we're going to get into, okay, concepts. Which 2 items are going to go together? Well, we'll have the star and the moon. Which of these things are going to go together? Well, the bee and the flower. So there's a lot of different concepts in here. We're going into colors and shapes, patterns. What would you wear when it's cold outside? So these are all just general preschool skills.
Okay guys, that's it. That is what I do for preschool with my daughter. I hope this video has been helpful for you. If so, I'd love to know the things that you're excited to try. And if you're doing anything different, I'd love to know what. I love learning about what different people use for preschool. It's always helpful. And like we all know, it takes a village. It really does. So grateful to have you as part of my village. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Until next time, bye-bye.